What's up, guys? This is Kephas.
Welcome to SBA Spotlight. In these videos, I'll be covering how well the single button assistant performs for each spec, what it does well, where it falls short, and how to get the most out of it, especially if you're looking for a lower stress or more accessible way to play. So whether you're here to relax, overcome a limitation, or just see how far one button can take you, I've got you covered. Alright, so let's talk about the single button assistant and how it handles Enhancement Shamans. This is a very interesting one. According to Wowhead, there's some pretty big discrepancy depending on which hero talents you choose. For Totemic, it's estimating 81% of optimal damage. That's actually pretty good. Stormbringer, however, isn't doing so good. It's estimating a whopping 68% of optimal damage. That's a pretty significant discrepancy, and it seems to boil down to the tool not handling the Stormbringer rotation nearly as well. So if you're looking for more damage, you're likely going to want to go with Totemic for now. I've heard from a lot of people who are really enjoying playing Enhancement Shaman with the single button assistant, and it makes sense because Enhancement Shaman has a reputation for being one of the more challenging classes to play right now just due to its bloated rotation and so many actions per minute. So it makes perfect sense, and honestly, the single button assistant covers a lot of ground. This class has a lot of cooldowns, and a lot of the spells you use are very dependent on what you choose in your talent tree. The good news is that the single button assistant handles all of them except for Ascendance. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. The tool will even handle your weapon buffs, like Flame Tongue weapon, Wind Fury weapon. If those aren't active, it will apply them, but it won't use any of your other buffs like Lightning Shield. But it is handling a lot, and you're not really going to have to track anything. It'll take care of all of your cooldowns, including longer ones like Doom Winds and Feral Spirit. It will make sure that Flame Shock is on the target so that you can benefit from that, and of course use it if it transforms into Voltic Blaze. It'll handle Primordial Wave as well as the ability it transforms into Primordial Storm, and use that with your Maelstrom. Obviously, it also handles your Maelstrom abilities, Elemental Blast. It'll use Tempest when it procs, and then of course Lightning Bolt for single target and Chain Lightning for AoE, and it will use them when you reach max Maelstrom. If you're Totemic, then it will use Surging Totem. It'll make sure it's keeping it on cooldown. It's a ground targeting ability, and it has no problem using it and keeping it where it needs to be, so that's something else that you don't have to worry about. I mean, really, if you're not using Ascendance, it pretty much covers everything. You're not having to track anything, not Maelstrom weapon, not cooldowns, and you just pretty much spam it and it does all the heavy lifting. In terms of simplification, this one is doing a lot. Now, as for Ascendance, you do have a lot of options in terms of how you can handle it. Unfortunately, Ascendance is not off the global cooldown, so you can't just put it in a standard macro with the single button assistant like you can a lot of other cooldown abilities. So if you're wanting to use Ascendance, obviously you could simply use it on a separate button. That's the easiest way. You could, of course, throw it in a Gnome Sequencer macro if you want to. So just have one block for single button assistant and one block for Ascendance. Of course, you could also just opt to not use it if you want to. It's really better for Stormbringer builds anyway, so you don't necessarily have to take it. And of course, the last option, and what I would do if you really want to go with it, is like rather than making a Gnome Sequencer macro or using a separate button, just use Deeply Rooted Elements. This will lose you some DPS for sure, but it will turn Ascendance into a passive and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. So if you're going for simplicity and you want to use Ascendance, then this is the obvious way to go. Of course, you could still make a standard macro with the single button assistant if you want to include any unused trinkets you might have. I'll have that macro in the description below if you want to use it, but that way you can have the macro use your trinkets on cooldown and then continue to use the single button assistant as you press it. Now, I've already mentioned that you could make a GSE macro with the single button assistant and with Ascendance if you really wanted to. It's not what I'm doing, but you do have that option. But if you're somebody who's used my other Enhancement Shaman GSE sequence from the past and you're wondering how it performs with the single button assistant, well, I want to be honest with you. I feel like the single button assistant is handling things so much better. With the Enhancement Shaman, there are a lot of abilities. There are a lot of complex abilities that change how they work, like Primordial Wave, for example. When it comes to Maelstrom abilities, you have to use modifiers or separate buttons, and with the single button assistant, you don't. It will cover all of them, so you won't even have to track your Maelstrom weapon stacks. It just handles the rotation so much better. So in both simplicity and in performance, the single button assistant is the clear winner here, at least when it comes to my sequence specifically. Overall, Enhancement Shaman is a really fun class with really flashy spells, but it can be very intimidating for a lot of people due to the amount of spells that you have to manage. But if you're looking for a class that plays relatively well with the single button assistant, then you can absolutely play the Enhancement Shaman. Just make sure that you go Totemic instead of Stormbringer. It's incredibly user-friendly, it does pretty decent damage, and you'll be able to do a lot of content with it. Those are my thoughts and what I've learned so far, but maybe there's something you've learned that I haven't. What do you think of the single button assistant with Enhancement Shamans, and how is it working out for you so far? Let me know in the comments. And with all that being said, I will see you guys on the next one.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by clicking that like button. And feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. And if you'd like to see more videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you like, you can support my work on Patreon. Links to all that stuff can be found in the description below. This is Kephas. Until next time.